Hello, I'm State Representative Janine Nodder, the host of Chattin' with Janine, and I'm taping an episode at Merrimack TV in the studio. So this is the first non-Zoom show that I've been able to tape since before quarantine. And my guest is Matt Mowers, who's running for Congress. Welcome, Matt.
Thanks for having me, Janine. It's so great to see you.
I know, in person. And people are probably wondering, well, wait a minute, how did you get in there with the mask? So we're going to tell them. We're going to show them. We walked in with the mask. This one is my I Love Lucy mask, but I also have a nice American flag one. And I have several because I think they're disgusting and gross, and after an hour I need a new mask. Germs against your face. So the rule is we have to wear this into the building. Our chairs are far apart as they can possibly be, and once the doors are closed, we can take our masks off and talk.
Yep.
So that's the disclaimer. So
great. Well, we came in safe, right? And
we
now
did.
We're actually here. It's great, and it's great to see you again.
You too. And see, the last time you were on the show, it was February on or near February 6th, because I had taped a previous show before you walked in.
Ronald Reagan's birthday,
Reagan's birthday, and we had cake.
Yes.
So we got to have cake on the show when you were here.
Well, this is a pretty good tradition. We're having cake again now, Janine. I love it.
Yeah, and I know. So people are going to think that when Matt Mowers comes on the show that we have cake, but actually what it is Nick LaValle is the station manager, and Justin Slez is the cameraman. I could see him on my Zoom show. I always talk about him being 3 miles up the road. But we all have the same birthday. So every year we celebrate our birthdays together, and we get dessert from a different establishment in Merrimack. So sometimes it's I don't know, where have we gone? Buckley's, cupcake places.
You have so many good options.
We do have a lot of good options. There's that big pink building.
Right.
Well, this is from Kahuna's, the big Kahuna's, and I called ahead of time because I forgot. I told them when I tape again, we're gonna have cake, and so this is what they had left for the day. It's vegan. And Colin, whose birthday is today, I think, today or yesterday.
This looks way too good to be vegan, by the way.
Close enough.
This is delicious.
Yes, well, he said it was very good, and it's chocolate. You can't go wrong.
No, you can't go wrong. I don't know if my wife's ever going to let me come back on the show, though, if she knows I'm having cake every time I show up, right?
Yes, well, we should have brought her.
I know, yeah. Well, I'll bring her a couple leftover bites then, maybe. We'll see. No promises.
So you've been getting a lot of sun, I guess, from knocking on doors?
Yeah, it's been great. Now that we're, restarting in-person campaigning again, so we're knocking on doors, doing
with
events.
the mask.
With the mask, yeah, because we're always show up with the mask.
And then I pull it off as soon as I can.
Yeah, you want to be safe. You want to make people feel comfortable.
It's comfort.
Of course,
it's for
we want everyone
comfort.
to be healthy, right? So we wear a mask, but people are excited to see someone again. They're excited to talk about the issues, and so I was out knocking on doors in Laconia yesterday. We've knocked on doors in Merrimack.
Yeah, I know.
I live in Bedford, right up the street, so we've knocked on a lot of doors in Bedford. And just the reaction's really been great. There's a lot of energy there. People are looking for a new representative down in Congress. They don't like the representation they're getting. They feel like they're misled by the current member of Congress, Chris Pappas. He said he was going to work across the aisle, and he hasn't. He said he was going to work with the president,
and they
hasn't.
don't.
It does nothing. I mean, literally, he's voted with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. 100%. Every single vote that she's cast, he's cast the same vote as her. And so, people are really excited for new leadership. They're excited for new representation, and that's what we're campaigning on. And Merrimack's going to be a big part of that. Yes.
Well, there's always, the other side that does their little buzz and they say stuff. And one of the things they say is everyone votes party line. And in Merrimack, they were saying that Dick Hinch and I are always party line. I'm like, well, okay, well, you do have two parties in the House, and Dick Hinch is the leader, and I'm on his team.
Right.
So we're the leaders, and so of course we're going to have a certain view.
Right.
And we hope our members will vote with us. They don't always, but that makes sense.
Yeah, and I've talked to Dick about it. I've spoken to you about it. I mean, you let members vote their conscience and vote their districts at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. They don't let Nancy Pelosi doesn't let Chris Pappas do that. I mean, the fact that he has the same voting record as someone representing San Francisco like Nancy Pelosi, or someone like AOC who's representing the Bronx, just tells you how out of step they are. And unfortunately, we now know why he's voting that way. Because Nancy Pelosi's super PAC has reserved almost $2 million in ads on his behalf. $2 million. And so what that means, by the way, is this is going to be one of the last chances for folks in Merrimack to see me looking like myself, because by the time they run these ads, I'll be 100 pounds heavier, and it'll be black and white and grainy images and the rest of it. But that's the reward for voting 100% with Nancy Pelosi, is that she's willing to spend $2 million to get him reelected. So that's why we're knocking on doors, talking to people one-on-one. This is a grassroots campaign. That's why it's so great to talk to you and so many viewers in Merrimack.
It is beneficial to actually get to meet the voters so that they know who you are and not just what the other side says about you. Because the other side, to be honest, they're not very honest.
Right, right. No, I mean, look, they're going to make up anything to win, right? It is blood sport these days on the other side, unfortunately. It used to be that we could have honest disagreements. That you could sit down like we are today, Janine, and have a difference of opinion and have a conversation. Unfortunately, the way politics are in Washington right now, you can't do that. There's no room for it. So we're going to try to bring some of that back. I mean, look, I'm a conservative. As you know, I'm pro-life. I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment. I've signed an Americans for Tax Reform pledge saying I won't increase taxes.
I signed the same pledge.
Yep, you signed the same one. But at the end of the day, we can still work with the other side. I'm willing to sit down and have a conversation and try to find some common ground on ways we can work together. That's what people expect of us. But unfortunately, the other side doesn't see it. It's just all politics all the time, and it's blood sport. And that's what I think people are getting really sick of.
Yeah. I remember before COVID, I was at a meeting, a gathering, and you were introduced. You walked up on the stage, and a lot of people didn't know who you were, and like, oh, who's this guy? And then you started talking, and by the end of your speech, everyone was clapping loudly for you. You just did a phenomenal job. You're a very good speaker, and you know the issues.
Oh, thanks, Janine. I appreciate it. Yeah, well, I'm fortunate that between my time serving as executive director of the Republican Party here in New Hampshire, probably almost 7 years ago now, got to know so many of our activists that way. And then also having an ability to serve in the president's administration, to serve in the State Department for a couple years, just gave me a unique perspective. I was able to see firsthand how folks have suffered under socialist regimes around the world, most notably in Venezuela. And how you've taken a beautiful country like Venezuela. And in the case of 20 years, I moved around a lot as a kid. My dad worked in marine construction, so anytime he had a new job, worked on a different job site, we traveled with him. So we actually lived in Venezuela. And it was a beautiful country at the time.
So it wasn't socialist at the time?
No, it was just before the socialist regime came in. So this was 1998. And any movie playing in New York City was playing in Caracas. If you went to the mall, every store was filled. It was beautiful. It was vibrant. 20 years later, of a socialist regime, and I'm back in the region working in the State Department under President Trump. And we're trying to figure out how we get basic necessities like food and medication to people in need. Basic humanitarian assistance to these people, because you needed a wheelbarrow full of cash in order to just buy a cup of coffee because of the inflation policies there. You had people who couldn't afford food. You had, we had to ship in baby formula so babies could have the nutrition that they needed. I mean, it's really just a sad thing. It was 20 years. Think about that. 20 short years, not a long time. I remember what a Catholic bishop actually told me when I went down to those meetings, because we were trying to figure out how can we get humanitarian assistance to people in need without going through the government, because the government was holding things for political purposes. It was just atrocious. So we said, if we go through the church, we might be able to actually get this to the people. And a Catholic bishop said to me that when Hugo Chavez came in, back at the end of 98, beginning of 99, we were told that if we just gave up a little bit of our freedom, we get economic security in return, and now we have neither. Right? Yep. I mean, and you just think about that, and that's exactly what has failed that country. It's what's failed so many countries time and time again. Unfortunately, it's what some folks are trying to do here now.
Socialism doesn't work, and I know when I see all these young people, and they just think it's a wonderful thing. I'm like, but it doesn't work. And they can't even get toilet paper in Venezuela.
That's right. That's right.
And then during COVID, during the quarantine, see, that was our first taste of socialism. There's no toilet paper. Right.
It's just, it's sad. And so, I think that's why, I know, Janine, you and I, last time we were here, we were celebrating Ronald Reagan's birthday, right? And he said, freedom's never more than one generation away from extinction. And that's why so many people, including folks from my generation, need to step up to the plate. It's one of the big reasons I'm running, is to run and ensure that we're securing the freedoms and the liberties that so many have fought so hard to preserve for our country, and make sure that we're handing that down to the next generation. And then what I learned from my time at the State Department is that we can also ensure that others can see that freedom too, and that others can taste that freedom, because it's an amazing American virtue that we're happy to export, right? The idea of freedom and liberty and equality and the rest of it, and allow the rest of the world to share in that as well, and that's important too.
And there's a big difference between giving a hand up as opposed to a hand out. So a hand, it goes in line with teach a man to give a man a fish, you feed him for a day. Teach him how to fish, you feed him for a lifetime.
Exactly right. And and this is getting back to what we were talking about earlier, the discourse that's going on. So many people say that we're mean and you're angry and all this. No, I mean, we are generous, compassionate people. I mean, we saw that during COVID-19. Janine, I know you're like me. You were helping out community organizations where you could and supporting small businesses where you could.
Yeah, we did a relay. My neighbor had Cindy McLaughlin. She organized it. She and her husband Pat. It was 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So 12 hours of running. And we ran laps, and people were bringing donations for the food pantry. So I went out basically every 2 hours and ran over 5 miles.
Wow,
so
that's incredible.
I know. I ended up.
I don't think I've run 5 miles in 3 months.
Yeah, 30. Yeah, well, right now my IT band's giving me trouble. It's like, darn it, this cake is not helping. But I ran 31 miles that day.
Wow! Oh my gosh!
And then after that, because we had some time on our hands with quarantine, I ran a 26.2 run just on my own 3 months in a row. So after 4 months in a row of that, my IT band is telling me, okay, you're not running very much this week. So
yeah, hopefully it feels better soon.
Thank you.
Yeah, we didn't do much running during quarantine. We did a lot of eating. But
everybody did hashtag COVID-25.
That's right.
Everyone gained 25 pounds, and now I'm seeing a lot of the people, and I'm noticing. We have a lot of work to do to get back in shape.
Everyone took up baking. We were took up baking and the rest of it. But what was so amazing around that time is this was a global pandemic, right? It was impacting everyone in the world. Was to see our communities really come together.
And they did. They did. One of my neighbors put up, "We are in this together," right on her garage.
Yeah. I mean, and we had a group of people in Bedford. They call themselves the Bedford Sewing Battalion. And we had a generous individual donate the supplies to make a bunch of masks because we had, frontline workers and nursing homes and the rest of it who didn't have PPE.
Right.
And so you had this group of people. It's to the point where they're making literally thousands of masks a day. And so my wife and I helped do some deliveries for the masks.
That's
nice. My sewing abilities are a little lacking, so but I was able to deliver.
Yeah,
so
I don't sew.
Great.
I bought online.
Yeah.
I just bought them online.
Yeah, that's what I ended up buying them too. My wife made a couple early on, and we bought some more. We bought American, of course, too, which was important. But what was really a shame? So we saw our communities rise up that time. But who was letting us down was Congress. Remember that during the first relief package, there were key things like the Paycheck Protection Program that were held up for weeks at a time sometimes.
Yes.
Because of a bunch of partisan liberal wish list was trying to be jammed into the COVID response bill. And, so take, for example, when Paycheck Protection Program ran out, Nancy Pelosi, along with Chris Pappas, refused to vote on it at first until they could put in Green New Deal emission standards and all of this extra spending on things that had nothing related to COVID, nothing related to it. And yet they held up PPE, so it expired for a week. Over 4 million Americans went on unemployment that week. Over 4 million because PPE ran out. And so at a time where our communities were rising up and coming together and rising to the challenge, Congress was failing us. Our politicians were letting us down in Washington, D.C. And that's part of the reason why we need new leadership, someone who's going to understand that when we're in a time of crisis, a time that should unify us as Americans, we shouldn't be putting a bunch of partisan wish list items into that type of bill. We should be responding to the crisis at hand, we should be providing the emergency relief that's needed, and we should be putting our own politics to the side, and unfortunately we're not seeing that done down in Congress right now.
So as you're meeting the voters, and this is what I ask every single candidate that comes on the show, is what are the voters asking you? Is it all just COVID, or they have other issues?
No, there's a lot of other issues. They're really concerned about the attacks on law enforcement we're seeing.
Oh, yes.
Because, we are seeing...
defunding the police.
Oh, it's outrageous. It's outrageous. And, our law enforcement officers are being asked to do more and more. They're being asked to do more and more every single time.
Who wants to be a police officer? Yeah. And we're going to take away, they're not even going to be able to protect themselves.
That's right, taking away qualified immunity. So Chris Pappas voted for a bill that would strip away qualified immunity, which will allow criminals to sue police officers with frivolous lawsuits. And not just sue the police officers, but sue their families as well. It's just, and we're asking them to do so much. So we hear that come up a lot. I've talked to law enforcement. I've met with local law enforcement, state troopers, police chiefs across our state. And what they've told me is that if that bill became law, it would lead to some of the largest numbers of resignations of law enforcement in history. And what's that going to do? It's going to leave our communities at risk.
Right, and the other side also wants to take all our firearms away.
Right.
So remember that.
Yeah, so no cops and no ability to defend yourself, right?
And then what happens? Gee, if you read history, those who forget the past are condemned to repeat it.
Yep, exactly right. And so we saw, so I'm hearing that issue a lot. I'm also hearing a lot of people say, how do we break away our reliance on China? Because we've always known about it. How many times have you walked out of Walmart and you have something that says made in China?
Yes.
But what we saw in COVID-19 is how much of our core ingredients for pharmaceuticals are made in China. What about national security equipment? What about PPE? How many of these planes from Shanghai are coming and landing in Manchester, with PPE? So one of the big proposals I've pushed for, and it's one of the first things I'm going to work on when I get down to Washington next year, is to ensure that we're incentivizing companies in those key areas to bring that manufacturing back to the United States. And we can do it. I've been talking to biotech companies that are ready to move that manufacturing away from China here to the United States, and we've actually had conversations about bringing them here to New Hampshire, which is not only going to decrease our reliance on China, but it's going to create good-paying, high-tech manufacturing jobs right here in the Granite State, and that's good for all of us too in our economy.
I like that. Well, I have a YouTube channel now, so I've been putting my shows on YouTube. So they've mostly been Zoom, but when you were here in February, that one's also on YouTube.
On YouTube, yep.
And the Ronald Reagan birthday. And there's one, I think this was the first one I put on YouTube, was some gentlemen that were in the Reagan administration. Oops, I'll drop my glasses.
There we go, we got them.
They came to talk about that what's happening in China and how they manufacture all of our drugs. They talked about COVID and how it was coming to it. So I knew ahead of time that, and I didn't quite believe it. I didn't want to believe it that we were going to have this thing. And I'm like, oh yeah, they said about the swine flu. My husband had the swine flu and it was bad.
Yeah.
It was really, really bad. So they're always trying to scare us with something. But no, they warned me, and that show is also on YouTube. So I'm going to put this one today on YouTube. So
we'll have to watch that one.
Watch that one and look for that one with the China.
Because I mean, look, and I have firsthand experience in this. When I was at the State Department, one of the jobs I had, I helped lead our global health office. So we implemented our global HIV epidemic response,
Yeah,
and so
we
to
talked
the
about that
HIV
before.
epidemic. And I was at the World Health Organization a lot for meetings. And I remember one meeting in particular where the leadership of that organization was going to make China the chair of that committee for the next year. So I asked them, I said, why China? They don't do anything on this issue. They don't really care about it. They said, well, we're hopeful that the following year they'll increase their contribution to us. So it's a pay-to-play scheme, literally a pay-to-play scheme with China. And you see that across the board. So when you saw the outbreak of COVID-19, and you saw the World Health Organization being used as a mouthpiece for the Communist Party of China, now we know why. It's because of those examples. And so China's been bad faith actors around the world. I mean, they've got millions of religious minorities held up in camps in their own country right now. Whether it's religious minorities like their Muslim population, or the fact that you have Buddhist monks who aren't even allowed to worship the way they choose fit. In fact, there are Buddhist monks who are lighting themselves on fire as a sign of protest because they're not being allowed to worship the way that they choose to by the Chinese Communist Party. It's really it's sad what's going on over there.
I've seen pictures of that, but that was like in the 60s.
Yeah, no, they're doing it again.
Oh, awful.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about live free or die. We're in the live free or die state. Those Buddhist monks are really putting that to the test. They're saying live free or die, for death is not the worst of all, right? It's incredible.
Wow, death is not the greatest of evil.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it on a coin.
Yeah. Well, it's important to remember that, right? And just how fortunate we are to be in our country, and how fortunate we are to be able to have those liberties and freedoms to have a conversation like this. And we could sit here and disagree if we want to, but we need to fight to protect those freedoms. And whether it's you in Concord or me down in Washington D.C., making sure we fight to protect those freedoms every day, so that we can hand it off to the next generation, because that's just so important.
So getting back to the knocking on doors, so we talked about COVID, of course, and then the police, and then other issues?
In China, yeah. So
China.
Those are the main issues, and also how we can get our economy back, right? People want to feel safe when they go back to work.
That's on my card, getting the economy back on track.
Yeah, it's important. A lot of people have been impacted.
Somewhere.
A lot of people are out of work. A lot of people want to already get back to work, and that's important. So I hear about that a lot, and I think there's some things we can do. First and foremost, we need to keep an economic environment that can create jobs. So we need to keep taxes low and reduce taxes more. And I'd be a big supporter of cutting taxes more for the middle class.
Oh, me too.
Yep. And you vote for it all the time. You've been instrumental in making sure we don't have an income tax coming out of Concord. that same income tax that Chris Pappas supported back when he was a state rep.
Yeah.
Many years ago.
I always vote no new taxes. We can't afford it, don't need it, nope.
That's right. That's right. Well, it's what makes New Hampshire so special, among many things. But,
Right.
part of it's our really good tax climate for middle-class families. And, that needs to be protected in Washington, D.C. as well.
One thing I don't understand is, some people, I know the people from Massachusetts, they always get a bad rap because people just assume that they move here. Some of them move here actually because they like it, and they vote to keep things the way they are. But it's true that there are people that move here from other areas to get away from their high taxes, but then they continue to vote the way they voted in there where they came from.
Right.
And how is that going to keep New Hampshire the way it is? You moved here because you like it. Don't vote to ruin it by voting the way you voted there.
That's right. That's right. Let's keep New Hampshire the special place it is. Don't leave the old voting habits behind.
Because where are you going to go? Where are you going to go after you ruin New Hampshire?
I mean, it's incredible, and you see it right now. If the folks you're working in Concord right now, there you are. The Democrats in Concord are trying to push an income tax, and they're getting cover from Democratic leadership, whether it's Chris Pappas or Gene Shaheen or the rest of them. They're getting political cover for that. That happens, and don't let them sell this argument. They always try this, right? Saying, well, it's just a small surcharge, right? It's a small surcharge or a tax, but it's actually going to lower other taxes. Never happens.
Yeah, and that's what they say. They push that, and I see it on social media too. But I'm so busy. I don't have time to listen to all their little arguments, and I know what their side represents. Right. I don't have time to read all these hundreds and hundreds of comments. So I'm just working on my own campaign. This is what I stand for. I'm a conservative, like you. So I bet if we wrote down what we believe in, it'd probably be about the same thing.
Just about, probably on almost every issue.
Yeah.
And I really give you a lot of credit because I've learned, I was endorsed by Elise Stefanik, Congresswoman from New York, about a month and a half ago. Right, and she's a strong conservative female leader for our party, the way you are here in New Hampshire.
Thank you.
And the vitriol that came our way after we announced that endorsement was incredible.
Oh yeah, even from someone from Merrimack.
Yeah, I mean you have Rosemary Rung, Democratic state rep right here in Merrimack, who compared her to a stray cat in the alleyway of a Chick-fil-A, is what she said. I mean, it was just comparing a sitting member of Congress, a young, strong, powerful, conservative woman to a stray alley cat. I mean, what it told me is that, unfortunately, the other side says, if you don't look like the Republican we think you should look like, or act like the Republican we think you should act like, or sound like the Republican the way we think you should, we're going to demonize you, we're going to personalize it, and we're going to try to tear you down. And so, they try to do that to me as a young candidate. They try to do it to you, and so, people like Elise Stefanik, because you're women, because it doesn't fit the nice, neat narrative that, the Democrats want to paint for Republicans. And that hit close to home. So I give you so much credit for standing up and remaining to be a strong, powerful, conservative voice. Because I can only imagine how many comments you get on Facebook. Because
I don't like I said, I just don't look at it.
Yeah, it's the smartest thing, right? Smartest thing you can do.
Because I have things, I have work to do. I don't have time to get into the little. I don't want to say that on TV.
I mean, you're busy representing your constituents, and you talk to them when you knock on their door, and you're talking to them at the grocery store and at the park, and everything else. When you're going out for a run, and I'm sure you run into people all the time.
Yeah,
right?
I know this lady that lives near me. She said one time in the winter, because I run an all weather and I bundle up, and I got this knit hat ties under my chin. She said, "You're doing a good job," and I thought she meant because I was out running in the snow and the ice, but no, she knows who I am, and I saw her yesterday, and she said, "You got my vote."
That's amazing. Yeah. That's amazing. See, there you go. That's the only poll you need, right? Is when you're out seeing people. So, yeah.
And I've been hearing from people that I haven't seen in years. People from Merrimack, and
really?
It's so sometimes when you go and try to trash somebody, all you do is you help them.
Yeah, that's right.
That's right. Because you find out their supporters.
Well, I got to tell you, when we're knocking on doors in Merrimack, we've had a couple voters say, because some people submitted letters to the editor about it and everything else when Rosemary Rung endorsed Elise Stefanik. They said, "Are you that guy who Rosemary Rung attacked when you got endorsed by that congresswoman from New York?" I said, "Yeah, I am." They said, "You've got my vote because of that."
Oh, nice.
So you're absolutely right. Sometimes it backfires when people try to launch those negative personal attacks like that.
I just try to focus on this is what I believe in, and they can do what they want. So,
yeah, that's right. Yeah. I mean, that's at the end of the day, you've got to vote your conscience and vote for your constituents.
And you got to have a thick skin, or you have no business being in politics.
That's right. Ain't beanbag, right? This ain't beanbag.
No.
Yeah.
So I've been, talking to the new candidates. I'm like, just develop that Teflon coating, because they're gonna make up stuff about you, and you just have to not not let it bother you.
Yep.
Or you can't do the job. You
no,
can't.
that's right. That's right. And you gotta have thick skin, and you gotta just, at the end of the day, remember the people you're representing. And that's why I'm running for Congress, right? Is to make sure I'm going to represent the people of New Hampshire. I'm not going down there to vote with Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. I'm not going to vote with anyone 100% of the time, except for the people of New Hampshire.
Well, we have just a minute left, so we just want to tell the viewers there's a primary September 8th, and then the general election is November 3rd. And in 50 seconds, you can talk right into that camera and right to the voters.
Well, Janine, thank you. And thank you to everyone out there. My name's Matt Mowers. Just as a reminder, I'm running for Congress against Chris Pappas. And I'm running because 2 years ago, he said he was going to be different and work for the people of New Hampshire. Instead, he's just worked for his party leadership and Nancy Pelosi 100% of the time. I'll be different. I'll stand with New Hampshire. I'll try to protect your middle-class taxpayers in our state. I'll stand with law enforcement. I'll be a new conservative voice to go down to Washington, D.C. and represent you. I hope to earn your vote in September. All right.
Thank you. So September 8th is the primary, and then November 3rd.
All right.
And with that, I'll say adios.
Thank you so much, Janine. Appreciate it. Anytime.
And I'll be back. I'll be back in the studio. And Zoom. I'll keep the Zoom, too. That'll work. Bye, everyone.